It's hard for me these days to really get stuck into a game. Usually it has to grip me from the very first moment right through to the last, or I lose interest and never do manage to complete them. It's for that reason there are certain genres of game which I tend to avoid playing due to the open-ended nature of the gameplay and the sometimes huge amount of grinding that's involved in them. However, things were different when I was younger. Without a job to worry about, the other distractions of day-to-day life, and having a seamlessly endless amount of free time to relax and play games with, there were times in my life when I could lose myself for hours in a game. Harvest Moon 64 is one of those games. On paper it sounds like the title that the majority of people wouldn't like. You're in charge of your own farm, and as you build and grow it, you have other characters in the town to build relationships with. Thankfully, we have a greater knowledge of games these days, and it allows us to try something that on paper may not sound like the type of game that we usually like to play, but in reality it does bring us to something quite special with the creativity of developers. You could say it was a no-brainer that Harvest Moon would eventually land on the N64. With the Super Nintendo entry into the series having a cult following, and the handheld versions doing very well also, Victor lined up their next entry into the series to be published by Natsume. Landing on the console in 1999, it was a game which at first glance did very little to push the console to its limits. In fact, many critics said that it was barely a slight upgrade from the Super Nintendo game. But delve deeper, and you'll find a game with small unique events which will keep you playing this game for months. The story begins with a very sombre tone. After entering some basic details about your character which will determine which season you start the game in, you are then shown a brief introductory scene where you learn of your grandfather's death. The old codger has only gone and left you his farm to inherit, and so it's just moments after he's 6 feet under the ground, you'll be on the farm with an aim of bringing it back to its former glory. The problem is that you only have $200, your trusty dog, and 2 years to do so. You start off with the bare minimum set of tools and equipment, and I will admit that the first task at hand can seem quite daunting. You'll need to remove the rocks and weeds from your land piece by piece, and it's safe to say that the game starts out very slowly. Once you have done this, you're then able to use your limited amount of money to buy your first seeds, plant them, and then go through the motions of watering and caring for them until the point when they're ready to harvest. When your crops are ready, you harvest them, drop them into your deposit box, and once a day they are collected and you'll make money from them. To keep things interesting, the different seeds that are available each season all have their own unique attributes. Some will grow quickly, allowing you to harvest many crops a season, but you'll get paid pocket change for them. Other crops will only ever seem to be ready just days before the end of the season, where you'll have a mad dash to try and cash them all in before the season changes, and any unharvested crops will spoil and you'll miss out on all of your hard work. At the end of the season, you can sit back and look at all of your hard-earned cash, and then you have to do it all over again as soon as a new season begins. This time though, you should have more money, which in turn will allow you to buy more seeds and thus turn your small little allotment into a churning industry. There are various tools which you can buy and upgrade as time goes on, and different crops and obstacles require the right tool for the job, and generally they are upgraded when you perform the same action for them a set number of times. For instance, when you first get the watering can, you'll need to water each plant one at a time. When you have an upgrade, you can then water through it once by charging your spray. The quicker you get these upgrades, the better, as it does take away the monotony of your actions and it helps you to grow your farm more quickly. And time really is of the essence, as not only just in terms of the 2-year time span to all of the game, but each day you'll also awaken, eat breakfast, and then only have a small amount of time before it's nightfall and you have to turn in for the day. Your actions will also tie your character, and so if you do too much hard work without eating or taking some rest, you'll be overcome with exhaustion. There are also some time-sensitive events in the game which will determine the ending to the game that you receive. Taking away the repetitive handling of your farm will be key events which will take place in the game's world. Generally these days will start out with the town's mayor arriving at your farm the day before to invite you to a certain event. These usually take place once in a season and are a great way for you to escape the slavery of the farm and spend some good quality time interacting with the locals. And this leads us to one of the game's series firsts, the ability to get married and have a child. Of course you can't go all Borat on the local village girls, put them in your sack and take them as your wife. These women are just as challenging as real world ones. At least here though, you'll have a meter to inform you how each feels about you. There are 5 different women in total that you can court, but don't take too long, because you're not the only hot-blooded male on the lookout for love. If you spend too much time on the farm with your sheep, then their hearts will wander elsewhere and you'll be left alone milking the cows. And other events such as festivals and horse racing do help involve you in the community, but at any time you are free to roam the village where there are a plethora of shops and other places for you to check out. A cool twist is that, like the rest of the world, it is time sensitive, and so the bar is open at night, the school is open during the day, and you can even pop in for a Sunday service on Sundays. For those who would rather make themselves a hermit, you can too venture out into the game's wilderness locations, where you will come across other ranches or unusual caves and wooded areas. Be friendly to the people that you find though, because they can teach you vital skills and open up additional modes of income such as fishing and the winery, and even upgrade your home. This really is just scraping the surface though. There are other side quests and achievements to unlock, such as following a treasure map and helping out other people, and so it becomes just as much about farming and tending to your land as it does about unlocking the next mini quest. As I mentioned previously, the game is not visually stunning, but it does, and it did have a retro feel even when I first played it all those years ago. I was expecting a huge 3D overhaul like many developers seem to force their games into for the N64, but this didn't. It does visually look like a slightly enhanced upgrade from the sprites of the Super Nintendo, but the developers did take some shortcuts which reduce the overall visuals. The biggest culprit is a horrible draw distance in the game. As you wander through the many locations, it's not uncommon for huge areas of black to suddenly fill in when you're near them. It's not as if the game was cutting back to push the other visual aspects of the game. Most of the animations, like the Super Nintendo and even Game Boy games, only consist of a few frames of animation, and so it's a shame that more wasn't done here, as this could have easily been taken care of. And the same too can be said for the game's audio. Whilst I love the good quality effects, which is great because you'll be hearing them repeatedly for hours on end, but some voice sampling, even if it was low quality, would have helped make the world feel more alive. The music in the game too, whilst at first is catchy, it will eventually push you to the point of turning it down. This isn't helped by the fact that every time you enter a new area, the same loop restarts over, and sometimes this can be multiple times in a few short moments. The music changes each season, and when you wake up on the first day of a new season, you'll be thankful for something new to listen to. When you think about the strong history of Nintendo consoles and games, it may surprise you to hear that Nintendo Power ranked this as their 278th greatest game of all time. Personally, I think your love or dislike of the game will be formed quite quickly. If you can handle the very slow start to the game and the repetitive nature of the content, then Harvest Moon is a game which you could sink a whole ton of time into. It also lends itself for many repeat playthroughs, as you'll want to try and complete different side quests, marry different girls, and the perfect rotation in tending to your farm and the animals that you bring to it. On the other hand though, this really isn't a game that you can pick up and play and get an instant satisfaction from. It's a game which rewards your patience, eventually, but I fear that only the most dedicated gamers will be able to enjoy the small touches of brilliance that the game contains. This is also perhaps why the console badly needed a game like this. With so many ports of arcade hits and games which are designed to give you that quick fix, Harvest Moon 64 sits amongst a select group of games on the console which don't hand you everything on the plate. It's up to you to explore, find, nurture, and make your own experience. It's a game which truly you are in control of, and the overall outcome of the game is exactly what you make of it. The subtle RPG elements make this game which you can invest so much time into, and so I want to know why you like or dislike this game. Like me, do you get the great sense of satisfaction from managing your own resources and making the rewards from it? Or could you just not get past the often repetitive and menial tasks that the game has you repeat over and over? So as always, let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below, and until next time.